This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
The URC season is done and dusted, and we have our fourth different champion in 4 years as Leinster finally get the monkey off their back and lift their first piece of silverware since before the URC season began. We'll be deep diving their game against the Bulls, understanding where it went right for them, where it went wrong for Jake White's men, and after we've done that, we'll be giving a season review to every single team in the league. This is the URC Rewind, the only podcast with a voice from every single URC shield. Let's start the show.
You're listening to United Rugby Rewind.
I am joined by the usual regulars at this point, Ben, Mohammed, and Adam. Good evening, gents.
Good evening.
How are we doing? Did we enjoy the final?
Mm,
It was a final.
It was a final. There was nothing else to
two
say
finals yesterday as well, to be fair. Both were definitely finals.
It's final season. I worked out that every men's competition has got its final in June this year. From
Super Rugby next
MMR,
Saturday.
Japan, Super Rugby, even stuff like Super Rugby Americas, the Pro Day Deux. It's all in June. So it's fun times, basically, is what I'm saying. So, Adam, we'll start with yourself. Leinster, the URC champions for the first time, and they did it in some style in the end.
Yeah, fair enough to Leinster. I'm going to start off being nice, just because I can't really say anything bad about that Leinster performance. They really shut down the Bulls. Straight from the get-go. You had that try from Conan in the first 5 minutes, and if you're a fan of any other of the URC, or if you've watched the URC all this season, you just kind of know, here we go. I feel like that was the sort of start. And that try by Jordy Barrett was it was unbelievable, wasn't it? It was mad to see. But you know, at the end of the day, I think this is sort of the win that they needed, that trophy that they needed, that they've so hard fought for.
It's a Jody Barrett try.
The Jody Barrett try was like, I actually thought that Tommy O'Brien was actually going to go for it.
He 100% says to O'Brien, leave it.
Adam, does it remind you of his brother's try against the Wallabies in the 2015 Rugby World Cup?
I was
Ben Smith off the outside, and Bodie just runs, because Bodie came on off the bench that day. Conrad Smith or someone in
Look at him celebrate as well. I love him.
It was very similar try. It was just the footwork. Like you say, is incredible.
It was very similar. And you know what? As well, I think the final
in the rain too.
In the rain, in like the first one in the Northern Hemisphere, I feel like, you know, we saw so many away wins in the finals over the years. It's not a hemisphere thing. Like, it could be a hemisphere thing. You would think Bulls coming from their summer to like a Dublin summer where it's a bit rainy. But yeah, I think Leinster just overpowered them against a pretty one-dimensional Bulls team. I think Mohammed might agree with me by they didn't really have any type of get-go. There wasn't any type of break for them, even when they scored the try. I remember it was just before halftime. Actually, it was when the halftime whistle was blown, and the ball was passed forward, and I almost thought, like, it's a game of, it's sort of like that mental game. Willie LaRue, he couldn't quite believe the call, but it was as forward as it can be. It was but he couldn't really believe it. But like, you know, in professional sport, you know, it's also a mental, a mental game as well. So yeah, fair play to Leinster. And if I had RG Snyman come off the bench, like, you just like you would use that to your advantage. But yeah, fair enough. I think the right team won on the day. I think the right team won in the season, to be honest. I gave them a lot of stick, but that's what rivalries are for, isn't it? And also, if you had a cash pot of multiple zeros in it. But yeah, I noticed how the tackle success was 100% for Ross Byrne. Is that a dig at Prendergast? But anyway,
Yeah. I think the whether this was or Leinster's best performance of the season or not, definitely their best in the URC. I think
Mhm.
the two where they nilled teams in the Champions Cup were pretty perfect, to be honest.
Mm.
But this one, I think they just came out of the blocks and they were like, no, this is ours. And we'll talk about how disappointing the Bulls were in a minute. But I think something that we need to talk about, there's something that everyone thought that the Bulls were going to have the upper hand on them, was the scrum, and it just didn't work out like that. I mean,
Didn't
where's that
function at all.
scrummaging,
Yeah.
Ben? Where's that scrummaging performance come from?
I don't know. I think it was as flat as a performance as you could expect from a team that just didn't show up. It was flat everywhere. I mean, that 20 minutes in the first half where they had a lot of territory in the 22 and it just never looked like scoring a try at all. It just wasn't coming. And Willie LaRue misplaced kicks. He had an early kick in the start of the first half, I think, where in his own 22, and he was lucky that I think James Lowe might have knocked it on. Otherwise, that was a stroll in at 7
Oh yeah, I
14
remember
at that point.
Yeah.
That forward pass Adam mentions is a good few yards forward. I don't think you need to have like 20/20 vision to see that was forward. And that was it. It was just one dimensional. And I was sat there watching. I just couldn't see the Bulls scoring. I know they did eventually, but again, it was from that just through them all, wasn't it? Van der Merwe scored, but yeah, it was flat. But Leinster were impeccable yesterday, and I know Ryan Baird got man of the match and he deserved it. I was surprised Jack Conan didn't get the shout because he scored a
I
try.
thought Josh van der Fleer was excellent.
And Josh van der Fleer. So the entire back three were good. And then Finton Gunn coming off the bench after, I'll go back to that Gibson Park point in a moment, but Finton Gunn coming off that lovely little pass out the back from Ross Byrne for him to dive in. But it's a scrum half. There's a couple of wingers there and an outside centre who'll be a little bit embarrassed they didn't, keep him out, from scoring a try. Yeah. I know you've lost at that point, but a bit of professionalism I think is needed for the entire 80 minutes. But I just thought at the start, like hearing that Gibson Park was out very, very late, and I don't know why. Maybe one of you guys can tell me what happened yesterday, was an injury or a knock or other means. He was obviously there watching the game, so it can't be too serious. I thought maybe the Bulls would have a bit of a chance, but again, just lack of cohesion, no structure, very one-dimensional. Pack didn't work. They were just going backwards, whether it was their put in or Leinster put in. I think they lost a couple of pennies against their put in from memory. So, yeah, just poor. But Leinster, thoroughly deserved. And
the scrum battle was interesting.
Croke Park was great yesterday.
Yeah, the scrum battle, and I'll check the attendance in a minute. But the scrum battle was interesting. That obviously Leinster got that big push early on, and they were playing games at times. Like they gave away a free kick. And with the new law that I don't like, that you're not allowed to opt for a scrum off a free kick, I think free kicks are basically pointless in rugby now. But they got some that they just had dominance, and you just don't see that against the Bulls. And there was ones where there was a wheel, and I did kind of question those a little bit because I haven't seen the Bulls wheel at all this season. They always go straight. So for them to be wheeling, and obviously there's always like the preconceptions about Porter and his angles, but if you go back and watch the scrums, if you watch the feet of the flankers and the second rows, how they step, it's all a cohesive in one movement as a pack of eight thing that Leinster did to just fair play, stand up to the best scrum in the world. And I still believe that the Bulls is the best scrum in the world. The Bulls still got some nudges at scrum time.
Porter did concede a couple of penalties, didn't he? I think there was one where he kind of came up a bit quizzically, like one Ryan PRD had pinged him, but I think it's because he'd hinged, hadn't he? But yeah, you're right. I think Bulls just over the entire 8 minutes.
And as soon as Leinster got that 19-0 lead on 25 minutes, all they had to do from then is just kick the ball, just like have the ball down that end, and it worked perfectly. And the defensive stats are incredible for
this. I'm still going to criticise Pendergast. Reason being, there was a very, very easy penalty that he missed, and I didn't really understand that. And another decision where when they were 19-0, I think it was 19-7 at this point, they didn't take the 3 and went for the corner. And I'm like, I don't know why you're doing this. This doesn't seem to make sense. Like you just take the 3 and you go back to halfway. just look to, bonus points are irrelevant in knockout rugby.
And he missed
just
touch as
extend
well.
the lead.
He kicked the ball dead at one point, but he's still, he's still probably definitely the best 10 on the pitch, because Hussein
Yeah.
just completely vanished. And Mohammed, will come on to that now. An attacking performance from the Bulls, one of the worst that they've put in all season. A lot of people are very surprised at just how they just did not rock up in this game.
Yeah, it was disappointing. My concerns and my worries going into the game all came to fruition. The Bulls gave an overall throughout the squad, the whole match 23, it was like 6 out of 10, if that. It's like they've been working towards this for a while. They've got a good sort of well-balanced squad, and they just couldn't show up on the day. And the exact opposite happened with Leinster, who didn't look that great, even going into the knockouts of the URC. And then they saved their best performance for the final. It's almost as if the coaches at Leinster said, "Look, most of you guys, Jody Barrett's leaving. Most of you guys are going to play Lions. Some of you are going on tour with Ireland, and you've got all this criticism throughout the season. And the team is effectively set up to win the double, and they got knocked out of the EPCR tournament. So go prove people wrong, and that's what they did. It's like the thing that I've noticed on the knockout stages of this URC is that the teams that are winning are able to do clinical things consistently in batches so that they can nullify the opposition. Whereas like the Bulls had their moments in these games, but they couldn't and then they would just sort of like go backwards again with like a knock on and that type of thing.
I would say from the 30th minute to the 50th minute, the Bulls were actually on top for that period.
Yeah.
But they didn't capitalize on that and turn it into a significant amount of points, or at least reduce which is very similar to how the Bulls lost to the Sharks in Durban, where they had a significantly long period of time, in Pretoria as well, where they had a significantly long period of time of dominance, but it either turned into 0 points and or 3 points, which is not enough. So yeah, the Bulls showed up. Valera Rue, a lot of talk. I read a ton of articles this week of like sort of like maybe just talking up the final or whatever about what Valera was able to do, and he didn't show much of it. Flashes here and there. Yeah, it is what it is. If you want to be optimistic, you'd say, look, the Bulls made multiple finals. Very few, if any, none of this match 23 is leaving the Bulls. There are a couple of fringe players that are leaving the Bulls, like the fourth choice, highly rated and highly high potential scrum half. He's leaving. He's going to Bath. But none of this match 23 is leaving, and they've got a good balance of youth and experience. They've got older guys there like Nizam Kar. They got Janus Kirsten, who came back. Akafan Merwe isn't young by any means. He's been around, so it's good to sort of have a balance of youth and experience in the team. Although interestingly enough, I did watch a knockout game earlier this season in the RC where the commentator said that Akafan Merwe was the younger brother of Duan. I was like, no, it's the other way around. But yeah, it is what it is. I don't think
you say it is what it is. Like,
Yeah.
Jake's made a lot of noises about squad sizes and strengths and things.
Yeah.
And it's kind of when I say it's wearing thin, he's been making them for years now. And I'm starting to be like, well, hang on a second. Because when you talk about the Bulls, the first thing a Bulls supporter will tell you is, God, we're owned by the richest man in South Africa, or the richest man in Africa, or something like that. And they brought Valera Rue back. They're bringing Andre Pollard back. He's not on small money. He's just not. And so there are funds there. Now, maybe not to the level of the Sharks, who've got an all-star squad. I mean, if the Sharks had been in this final, all the chat about budgets needed to go away, because the Sharks would have, on paper, had a better squad than Leinster. I'm happy to say that. But now you talked about, like, it is what it is. This is 3 finals for the Bulls in the URC. Now, on the one hand, you probably look at that squad and say they're probably maximised getting to all those finals, because are they the best or second best squad in the URC over the last 4 seasons? Maybe not. So you could say maybe they've overperformed in that sense. But if you throw in the Rainbow Cup against Benetton as well, it's 4 finals in 5 years, and they've not won any of them. And we talked about the pressure that is on, someone like Leo Cullinan for failing to deliver. that's passed over to Jake White now. We're getting into the word Claremont is being thrown around quite a lot. So why aren't the Bulls able to win titles? Yes, this season was away in Leinster, and there's no shame in that. Home to Glasgow against the Stormers, away in Benetton. What's the problem?
It's mentality, has to be.
Yeah,
And
look,
the inability to think outside the box. I mean, yesterday, like that 20-minute period, another player I was pretty disappointed was Moody. He was poor yesterday, and there was an opportunity where if he's taken the ball at pace, he probably goes in, but he took it static and got tackled and went backwards. I think that was the story for the Bulls yesterday. That 20-minute period where they had a lot of possession, a lot of territory. They kept going 5-10 meters backwards. They were camped on that 5 meter line for a good 5 minutes in that first half yesterday. But they went through 19, maybe even 20, close to 25 phases before Willie LaRue, then obviously that forward pass. But it just seemed like they were going backwards. They just didn't look like they were getting off on there was nothing going around the shoulder, going around the corner. It was just going into contact one-on-ones every time. And it wasn't working. And I think it's a mental element there. They just didn't know how to deal with that Leinster blitz. Because Leinster were blitzing, and there was a couple where it might have been pinged for offside, but they were so quick off that line and just shutting down.
The Bulls kept doing this thing where they'd get the ball and stand still and wait. And I don't know whether they had like this plan.
It was very strange.
Get to the crash zone, stand there, ride the tackle, and then go from there. But it didn't work if that was the plan. And again, Mohammed, coming back to yourself, Jake White is normally the man with a plan. Where was his plan in this game?
Yeah, whatever tactics they had wouldn't necessarily working. The energy seemed low. I know they flew through early, and a lot of articles said that they didn't fly economy. They flew like first class and that type of thing. But there's obviously still
business class Bulls.
I don't want to make excuses for them, but like, yeah, I think what's interesting is that Johan Goosen was like the golden boy of South African rugby, and he never really kicked off in Test rugby because Heinrich Meyer thought it was a great idea to like play him very, very young. Similar to what Leinster are doing, but then Leinster seem to be protecting Pendergrass a bit better. Because Johan Goosen also couldn't defend when he was like 20 years old and shorter and thinner than Sam Pendergrass. Sam Pendergrass actually weirdly, this is going to upset some people, physiologically is a lot similar to Kerwin Bosch when he started at the Sharks because he went straight from high school. He didn't play any varsity cup. And then he was almost fast-tracked in a sense to the first team, but like the Currie Cup team. Although I will say the Sharks are a bit better at blooding young players into the first team these days. Because what they'll tend to do, like they did with Sabu Nkosi, although that didn't work out long-term for unfortunate reasons. And what they are doing with JJ, what's his name again? Well, anyway, the wing outside center. So what they do is they bring like a high profile school kid in, but then they don't play him at all. He just plays youth rugby for at least the first season, and then he's slowly blood in. So Goosen's on the downhill. That's the thing. So they needed to manage the team a bit better in terms of negating Goosen's weaknesses and using more of his strengths. But then again, if you have Goosen and you have Valero, yes, they're quite old, but you have Kane Moodley around them. Imperos Papier has been up and down. I quite like him as a player, but he didn't have the best game this game either, or in the semi-final. Although not as bad as what people thought it was. There were actually quite a few forwards missing from the Bulls that they usually use as attrition. But that's actually no excuse because, I mean, Leinster had a fair few players injured as well. It's like Leinster peaked at the right time and the Bulls looked like they were going to peak at the right time. But instead, I feel like the Bulls would have had a better chance if they had a week to rest and then fly through. Like if there was like a week in between instead of the next weekend. So hopefully we can fit that in somewhere in the schedule next season. I say play more games during the Six Nations and stuff like that. Just make the European teams play without the Scottish internationals and whatnot. Because during the Six Nations, it seems like the South African teams were just playing South African teams. So it's not like we could take advantage of the fact that you guys don't have some of your first choice players, much as I want to. So yeah, I don't think Jake White's under any pressure because the owners, Patrice Motsepe and Johan Rupert, really like him. And they're just going to stay out of his way. And they're going to figure like in the long term, because their model is we're going to invest because it's going to pay off long term. And they've made all these finals, and if you look pessimistically, those are a lot of finals to lose. And two of them were in South Africa, so you would think the first one was in Cape Town, it's not far from Pretoria, and the second one was in Pretoria, and you lost to Glasgow, who, in fairness, that was like peak Glasgow. This year, the Glasgow is not the same as last season. So I wouldn't think that. I think Jake White has the job as long as he wants it. It is what it is. He's going to be given the resources. I mean, their recruitment is quite good in terms of they bring mid-20s Afrikaner Oaks back from Europe, and most of them work out, some of them don't, and then they just sort of wash out. But and they do what the other teams do as well. They pick the bones of the Lions, unfortunately.
I found it dead interesting about what Jake White said afterwards with the idea of like signing more foreign players for the South African teams, because he went on about Jordy Barrett for the press conference. He was like, if I had Jordy Barrett or Snyman come off the bench, I would be winning trophies as well. But if what I'm hearing is that the Bulls are they're owned by such a rich owner, is it like an interesting thing to say? Like, would they have to look at signing foreign players to sort of huge it up? Like, do you know what I mean?
I would love to see more foreign players go to South Africa. I think there's two sides to it. Is that if you're South African and you go to Europe and you bring back a load of euros, that does a lot for you. If you are European, you go down to South Africa and you bring back a load of rand, that's not the same, unfortunately. And also moving from some places in Europe to some places in South Africa is quite a big lifestyle change.
It's probably the biggest culture change in top level rugby.
Yeah. So it's probably, but this doesn't go for everywhere. So, for example, I was talking to someone earlier about Fijians. If you look at the cost of living in South Africa to Fiji, it's very similar. Fijians, good at rugby. I don't know if anybody's noticed that they are good. So surely you could look over at someone like the Fijian Drua and go, he's good, and he solves a problem that we've got, and bring him over. Argentina, another one. Cost of living, slightly more than South Africa, but not tons and tons more. Bring them over. Their model, like South Africa, is all about letting players go abroad. So if you've got a hole you can plug, it doesn't need to be Geordie Barrett or Kiwi. Because to be honest, if a South African side is signing a Kiwi, it's someone who's not good enough to play for the All Blacks. So and I know that's who like we in the Europe sign all the time, but it's probably how much of an upgrade is that going to be? And then, like you said, Mohammed, about bringing guys back from South Africa, clearly that is something that is possible to do because they brought Andre Pollard back and
Sia back.
Wokolo's not Wokolo, like my understanding is that French teams were throwing money at him, but he wanted to be closer to home. If you read a lot of articles, what was also interesting is Jasper Visser, before he announced who he was leaving, playing in the Prem for another team, in the article, he was saying his biggest decision was him and his wife are gonna have a kid, and they want the kid to be close to his grandparents and that type of thing. Aka van der Merwe said the same thing when he returned to play in South Africa. But then Jasper Visser signed for Japanese team, which is a bit of a different dynamic, which means he basically goes and lives in Japan for like a few months, maybe 4 or 5 months. I don't know exactly how long the season is there, but his wife and his kid can be in a nice sort of gated community in Pretoria, close to his mom and dad and her mom and dad. So that's essentially what Jasper Visser was doing. But what Jake White, look, if Johan Rupert and Patrice Motsepe really want to open the checkbook and say, look, Jake White, we don't just want you to get Cobus Visser back from Europe, and who else came back from Europe? Willie Leroux, and there was a couple other guys on the thing, Janus Kirsten, that type of thing. Oaks who were doing well in Europe, but have sort of a potential. We want you to get like the guys who are playing regularly for the Springboks. Like, can you get Peter Steph Toy back? Can you get Mostert back? Can you get Jasper Visser back? Like, if Jasper Visser left the Prem and the Bulls were like, no, just play 8 for us. The other side of the coin for that is then, would guys like the two Oaks who were injured, Ulrich Lowe and Anakom, would they then get opportunities? So it's a weird double-edged sword, because all of our people want to maximize their very short rugby careers to make the most possible money, and you can't begrudge them for that. That then opens an opportunity for them at the 4 franchises that play URC in South Africa. Hopefully, we'll get the Cheetahs to also get back into Super Rugby because that makes complete sense. And the Super Rugby people seem to want a South African team back there. But if we had all the best players here, there would have been less opportunity for younger guys to get an opportunity. So we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, if I were Jake White, instead of like getting a Kiwi or Fijian, that type of thing, I would try and get like they've already started, but like the Pollard. That's the thing about Pollard. Pollard is very, very good, but he's also waning in terms of his physicality. So we're getting Pollard also at a slight down.
I think Finn
I'm not
Russell
saying
did a
Pollard's a
job
bad
on
player,
him
though.
yesterday, to be honest. I think Finn
Say
Russell.
again?
I think
How
Finn
did he do
Russell.
yesterday?
I think Finn Russell clearly got the better of Andre Pollard yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Very,
it's not
very
like they're
much
getting
so.
prime Andre Pollard. Whereas what the Sharks did is the Sharks got Jaden Hendricks, who is a raw talent, played really well for the Lions, played quite well for us this season. Jordan Hendricks. Jaden, not so much. But the Sharks are betting that we'll get Jordan Hendricks a couple of years into his prime, and at a certain point, South African players say, "Look, I've been here for a while. I'd like to just do 1, 2 seasons in Japan." The other problem we have is that um, uh, Lucanio Am was like on fire. He was in great form 2 seasons ago, and then he did a sabbatical in Japan, came back, had an okay season last season, and this season he's been injured a lot. And when he can play, he can't play that well. So, it's like just getting the right balance that Leinster did so
Yeah.
well. Good for them.
I don't think Pollard will do much in the final anyway. I mean, I read an interesting stat yesterday. That was he's been in 11 finals, either at club or international level, and he's only won 2 of them. And the 2 of them that he was a winner and he was on the bench. So I remember he's at Montpellier and they beat Leicester in the 2021 Challenge Cup final. I don't think he started. I think he came off.
His club career's not been glittering. He's left a few places with not been a fan's favourite. But we know he's obviously worshipped in South Africa because of what he's done in the Springbok jersey. So we'll have to see. And he is a Bulls man. So, I'm just looking forward to watching it anyway. But it'll be interesting. So I think, Adam, last word on Leinster. It's difficult to know how to sum it up because it doesn't... It's a strange feeling because, of course, winning anything is an achievement. And it's a big deal because they're getting the monkey off the back and they're silencing the haters, which they have done. Like we said, there's pretty much, apart from Ben managed to imagine a few things, there's very little to criticize from that performance. But it doesn't feel like we can just heap praise upon praise on them, which is ironic because they are clearly the best team by a lot.
Yeah, it's because they went out this season wanting a Champions Cup. That's what it is. I think if they would have won a Champions Cup, I think if you asked the Leinster fan at the final whistle of that game yesterday, and you would say, would you rather have a Champions Cup or URC? I find with Leinster fans, they're obsessed with getting that 5th star. They are absolutely upset. Like, they're driven by it. Like, every single year, this is going to be the year. We're going to get our 5th star. And I feel like that's when we sort of will feel something different about Leinster winning. As I've said on the few podcasts since I've joined, Leinster play like Leinster, and they're a very well-oiled machine, and they get their wins out of the way. They've played really good teams on the way to the final. They silenced Glasgow when a week before we were saying Glasgow can do a number here, silence them. They did the same with the Bulls yesterday. I think they're just sort of like in that sort of in the URC, I can only compare them to, like, do you remember in like 2011, between 2011 and 2015 with the All Blacks, and they were sort of winning a lot, and you kind of just was like, oh yeah, they're the All Blacks. That makes sense. But when that 2015 World Cup came and they won that was automatically a bigger thing because, like, there was like Dan Carter's last game, Richie McCaw's last game,
Conrad Smith,
Conrad Smith.
Yeah.
There was this whole dynamic. But I would argue that Leinster winning a trophy this year would probably set them up to do a number in the Champions Cup next year. Is Awoni better than Barrett? I don't think so. Is he going to do a number? Yeah, he's definitely not. Is he going to do a number at Leinster? It's confusing to say. I think with Barrett, you have sort of like a solid you know he's going to do well because he's a Barrett.
Hmm.
I just find it interesting. Like it is sort of like a, oh yeah, you know, I was watching it yesterday and I was like, yep, this is Leinster, this is what they do. 7th minute try, pile on the pressure, got to about 19-0. And as Ben said, they just started kicking it. They know what they're doing. They know how to win. They didn't really prove that against Northampton this season, but that was probably a freak coincidence. But they're just such a well-oiled machine. And for the other provinces looking, as me as an Ulster fan and as Caelan with him being a Munster fan, perspectives outside Leinster are sort of like, yeah, okay, but they get given everything. They get given everything. They get given the Aviva when the RDS is like, I know that there's not a stadium suitable in Belfast unless Casement Park eventually gets built that will be as big as that. But Munster have a big stadium that they can use. Connacht also do as well. You know, they all have the resources that like Leinster have the resources that we need. Like it needs to be spread out a little bit more, but they've got that. They've got their trophy. Fair play. But as you said, it does feel a little bit flat. It does feel as a neutral, but I think that's more a compliment to Leinster than anything else.
I think what was interesting thinking about the three knockout games they played and who showed up for them. I think, and you'll probably like that. I'm going to say is I think Scarlets were the only team that really
Yeah.
actually made it competitive at half time with obviously that fantastic try from Blair Murray, and then they obviously just like a little bit of. I think it's just a bit of ill discipline. Alec Hepburn, you know, there's a couple of little incidents when they're sort of mid second half, but I feel like the Scarlets were the only team that looked like they were in it at half time. Like Glasgow were out of it, well out of it at half time. I think, like, you know, I was like, the obviously two tries very late on to kind of give a little bit of a sheen to the score, make it look a little bit, you know, less flattering. Sorry, more flattering, I should say. And then yesterday at half time, Leinster were not gonna lose from there. But the only game I thought there might be a competitive second half was against the Scarlets. But I think the Scarlets had a different. I maybe just studied it a bit more and thought there was a way to sort of reach Leinster, which they did do, but the other two teams I just didn't think they could. I don't think they worked it out, and there was no plan B for either side, semi or final.
Yeah.
I think I think if you sort of like combat Leinster's cohesion and sort of play it a bit more sporadically like Scarlets did, that will catch them on a shocker. Well, and like Northampton did as well. I think you need that right level of you're going to go out and you're going to play a game of rugby and that's your goal. Like as a coach, you'd be like, here, listen, it's another game of rugby. Yes, it's against Leinster, but just see it as another game of rugby. Whereas I can imagine the Bulls are like, it's Leinster, it's Croke Park. I think it was about 40,000 people there.
It's 45, I think, off the top of my head.
45,
yeah. It was
which is, to be fair, for a week turnaround, is quite good. But you know, I think it's the big name. But I think if you're a coach like Dwayne Peel with the Scarlets and you're like, listen, everyone's written us off. You're gonna go out there and play rugby. That's the way to sort of face Leinster, sort of shock them and being like, oh yeah, we are here to play, which we didn't quite see with the Bulls, and we didn't really quite see it with Glasgow either. But I don't know if it's like occasions got to them. But yeah, I just find it dead interesting.
Yeah. Okay, then. So that marks the end of our review of the final. If you've enjoyed what you've heard so far, please consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. We're on a quest to 2,000 subscribers. So if you can help us get there, we massively appreciate it. Or if you are listening on audio platforms, please consider giving a 5-star review and maybe even sharing a link with a friend. Remember, we on Rap are always looking for new presenters for podcasts and setting up new podcasts all the time. If you are interested in getting into rugby podcasting, this is where most of us got our podcasting starts, and if that appeals to you, something that you'd like to try your hand at, get in touch with us, let us know your rugby background, and we'll be sure to find a home for you. Okay then, so for the second half of the show, and we're going to try to do this somewhat expediently, is we're going to review every single team in the URC and award them a pass or fail. Now, let me just explain how this is going to work. We're going to go from 1 to 16 in the URC. So the juicy ones, you're going to have to stick around to the end. And it will be the representative from that shield will say whether they think that team is pass or fail. There's no A, B, C, D. There's no red, amber, green. It's pass or fail. And then they'll present the case. And If we all agree, we'll move on. And if someone disagrees, they will say so. So, like I said, we're starting with the top. Hopefully, this is going to be a straightforward one. I should add, only URC form. Ignore Europe. Only URC. This is a URC show. Don't pay attention to anything that happens in the Champions or Challenge Cup. Okay, then. So, team number 1, Leinster. Adam, do you think Leinster passed or failed in the URC this season?
I think they passed. No, I was gonna try and make a joke there, but I just couldn't. They were faultless really this season. I think based on URC form, they lost twice, but I think they had things wrapped up by December, and I think no other team has done that. And fair enough to them.
I think
Anybody
I
disagree?
think Leinster winning the URC was worth it just to see RG Snyman physically assault the Leinster mascot when he tried to take a picture with his
Yeah.
wife. I don't know if you saw that video where RG Snyman was like,
Yeah.
"Stay away from my wife."
Leo the Leinster Lion looks a
Yeah.
little bit like him, to be fair.
Yeah. Okay. Mohammed, the Bulls, pass or fail?
Pass.
Good. I agree. Does anybody disagree?
Nah, they
No.
pass.
It's very
Yeah,
straightforward.
pass it.
Okay, good. This is expedient so far. Right, the Sharks. Okay. Now we're getting interesting. Sharks. Whether
Pass.
Sharks a pass or a fail.
I'm going with pass, yeah.
See, the Sharks for me are the kid in GCSE who mucks about in class and doesn't revise, then turns up to the exam and gets an A. Because it's just
The literal winger. Yeah.
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 And then they get to A level and get found out massively. I
Yeah.
certainly wasn't like that. So
Likewise. Yeah.
they weren't good,
Similar.
but they finished 3rd in the league. And this is the conversation we've had all season about the Sharks. So you'd say 3rd in the league is clearly a pass. That's met expectations in terms of results, but in terms of performances, like I said, you can only give pass or fails, but yeah, they're just that's I think that I said we should ignore Champions Cup as well, but I think the Champions Cup was a bit more of an accurate reflection of them. Ben, Glasgow, 4th in the league overall, pass or fail?
It's a pass for them. I think top 4. It was the same position as last year. They got to a semi. Last year was different class. This year, I think it was probably more realistic representation of the squad they've got. So they're still a pass. Top 4 is still pretty credible.
You wouldn't say that because they've gone backwards, not only in terms of results,
No,
but
I
also
don't-
performances?
I don't know. I still think they've passed. I think there's a lot of rejigging of that squad that's going to happen over the summer. I think with some big players being out late on the season, Tupelotta been out for a very long time, Ferguson being out, and now unfortunately missing the Lions tour. That's 2 world class players in their position. And I think if they'd been available for much of the later season, they might have gone more better. But I still think it's a pass based on who was available for each game of the season.
Cool. Sounds like everybody agrees. So on to the Stormers in 5th, Mohammed. So 3 South African teams in the top 5. First thing to say. The Stormers, known as the Goof Troop at times this season, I predicted them to miss out on the playoffs. Like I always say, I'm worried that I'm going to be known as a Stormers hater. I'm really not. Are you giving the Stormers a pass or a fail for this season?
Because it's binary pass or fail, I'm going to give them a pass. Because the thing is that when going into the season, I was like, you guys got a couple of really good players, but the overall quality of the team and the depth is a bit lacking. And they were incredibly inconsistent at the start of the season. Obviously, they boosted their way into the playoffs with that 4-game home run. 2 games and a bit of rest and another 2 games, and they won all those games quite convincingly. They've got a lot of good players, but similarly, not having Damien Willemse for long periods of time, first for injury and then suspension. Frans Malherbe, him missing. Not having Steven Kitzel for the whole season. He got hurt in a Currie Cup game just so they could get him back up to speed earlier in the season. So he didn't play any URC or EPSR, nothing. So we just focused on URC this time. So yeah, pass for the Stormers, but I'd expect them next season to actually bulk the team up a little. But they do have new owners, and unlike the Sharks and the Stormers, unlike the Sharks and the Bulls, they don't have wealthy benefactors. So the Stormers' new owners are far more prudent with the finances, which is understandable because I don't know if anyone's aware, because the Stormers' finances were so bad that the people who now own the Sharks initially asked to see the Stormers' books, and when they saw them, they were like, "No, we'll also pass."
Okay. Yeah, I think the Stormers, you have to give them a pass for finishing fifth. Again, an unconvincing team. But like you said, Mohammed, I think sometimes we think the Stormers squad is better than it is. I think it's got some very bright stars, but I think a lot of it is very mid-table. Okay, next, Adam, Munster. Ooh, this is a juicy one. Sixth for Munster. Knocked out in the first round of playoffs. Sacked the coach at the beginning of the season.
I'm gonna say pass on the basis that they had such a turmoil season that I think getting into the playoffs was quite good for them. I think they could have very easily had a season like we did. It was sort of like a damp squid season for Munster because the way that they had, yeah, as you said, their coach got sacked. They were pretty lackluster. Nine wins, 9 losses. It's pretty evened out. I just yeah, I'd say pass given the circumstances. Um, it's just one of those interesting seasons for Munster. They've got a changing of the guard. Conor Murray's gone. Peter O'Mahony's gone. They've got a new coach coming in from the Chiefs. He's gonna do wonders with them, I'd say. I would say I'd say pass. I would say pass. I'd say somebody would probably disagree with me. But I think given the season that they've had, making the playoffs is a good thing. And they've got Champions Cup as well. There was a part of the season where we think that they would have dropped out to Challenge Cup for the first time as well. Into like the lower eights of the table. So I think it's a pass given the circumstances.
Interestingly enough, I did meet former Munster coach Graham Roundtree the Sunday after they lost to the Stormers that Saturday. He was in Seapoint and I was running the last leg of the Cape Town Marathon. And to my left, I saw him and two other guys walk towards me on the pavement. And I looked at him and I said, like, I know that guy from somewhere. And then I realized it was Graham Roundtree, and then I stopped to talk to them for a bit. They were very pleasant until I reminded them that next week they're playing the Sharks, and I support the Sharks, and they became very upset. But then I continued with the marathon, and they went on to Seapoint. So good for them.
And then I think that was the last game that he ever played. So blame Mohammed is what I'm hearing here.
Yeah.
I think
It was a curse.
I think Munster are right on the precipice of a fail. Like
Yeah.
if you remember the fact
Yeah.
that they were down at halftime in the last game of the season to get into the playoffs at all, and how close that playoff battle was. You say they've had a turmoil season, but a lot of that turmoil was self-inflicted.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Ben, this feels like a kind of like by a 1% kind of pass.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking Brexit 52-48. To be honest, I was for older viewers. I was in the 48, unfortunately. Yeah, I think on the toss of a coin, I think Munster just about passed for me. Just
Okay, who are we on to next? Ooh, I think we might be on to
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh. Right. Okay, Ben. So you've been slating Edinburgh all season.
Until March, yeah, and then it changed. It's interesting because we won fewer games this season, but because of the bonus point situation, we got 12 or 13 more bonus points. We had the lowest amount of bonus points last season. I think we had 3 or 4, and this year we ended up with 15. So it actually counted for 2 additional victories. So it meant we got into 7. Pass, just a bit like Munster. I think we have improved in terms of we've been more attacking. I think there's been more cohesion. The last 2 or 3 months was better rugby. I think something's clicked in that side from March onwards. The only player I'm disappointed about losing is Jamie Ritchie. I think we do have some talent coming through. We've kept hold of Darcy, we've kept hold of Duhan. So pass for me. Just.
Yeah. Shout out to
away quarterfinal is the most one.
Shout out to whoever runs the PA system at the Edinburgh home stadium, because I noticed that at every stoppage during the game, if someone gets injured or so forth, they play Rage Against the Machine, Wake Up. I watch multiple games with them there. And
Yeah.
I don't know who that person is, but I see you and I appreciate you.
Adam, Edinburgh, another one. I would say less so than Munster, but Like, if you think back to when they were, 42-0 down to the Lions in the first half and things,
Yeah.
to rescue a pass from there.
I just think Edinburgh's like late on in the season, they like when they thrashed us 47-17, like, they did have a spark back in them. I would say a pass as well. I'd say probably it's probably an easier pass than the Munster one, arguably. I'd say just about, but yeah, I would agree with the pass.
Okay, so as the voice of the Welsh Shield, I've finally got something to say. We have gotten to my part of the table now. Scarlet's clear pass, getting to the playoffs, top Welsh region. I was very happy, and I really, by the end of the season, I'd really started to enjoy watching the Scarlets again and watching us play and supporting the players and knowing all of our little nuances and things and getting into it and stuff. So it's a clear pass. I think the exciting thing from Scarlet's point of view is that I don't think that we're close to our ceiling. I think a lot of our players are very young, are only going to get better. I think with the right recruitment, which is going to be tricky for reasons, um, this team could go up a couple of levels. I'm really looking forward to playing in the Champions Cup next season. So we've, but I think the funny thing is Scarlets fans are a bit of all the Welsh regional fans. Scarlets fans are the most like have the highest expectations in terms of getting to the playoffs. Is like, yes, you've done what we wanted you to do, rather than it's a miracle. I think with Welsh teams sometimes when they do well, it's talked about as a miracle, whereas Scarlets fans are much like a no, we expect you to be good, and we've been good, I would say. And like you said, Ben, we gave um, Leinster the toughest game in the playoffs. So, yeah, does anybody not think the Scarlets were a pass?
No, I agree with you. And I think from a purely selfish perspective, because of the way the Champions Cup is kind of filled from the Premiership, is that as a Scarlets, for yourself, you and me as an Edinburgh fan, both of us living in England, we may get the chance to see our sides away without relatively, expensive trips to random parts of the world. But yeah, I think Scarlets. I think they every time I watch them, they seem to just pull out a performance. And I think you've got such an exciting backline there with Blair Murray. I think Blair Murray's just really, really good, and I think what a find to have him in a side like that. And I think if he cracks on, I think you can go a little bit. I think your ceiling is sort of maybe fourth or between fourth and sixth next season potentially. Stars have to align. You have to have a bit of luck and a bit of good fortune, but there's definitely potential for that squad to crack on.
Yeah. Cardiff. Now, so we're outside the playoff positions now, and we've given a pass to everybody who is in the top eight. So, but I'm not minded to give Cardiff a fail. I don't think Cardiff finishing ninth is a failure necessarily. And I think if you kind of, is it kind of, oh, Cardiff needs to make big changes ahead of next season to progress? I don't think they do. But they just need to tighten up their defense. Their attack is fine. I, I don't know if giving them a fail for ninth finishes feels harsh, especially when they won as many games as Edinburgh. They had the exact same record as Edinburgh, just a much, much worse points difference. So I'm struggling here. I don't, like I said, I just don't feel like I can give them a fail for finishing 1 point out of the playoffs. So I'm going to give them a pass, but it's kind of one of those like just nothing spectacular. It's just a pass. It's not a merit or a distinction. I don't know. What does everybody else think?
That
I'd
makes
give them a
sense.
pass.
Yeah, pass. Yeah.
They need to find a 10. I don't think Sheedy's the answer for Cardiff at 10. They need to find a better 10. I think that's pivotal. You can see from their points total, it's pretty low compared to the other sides there. And obviously they were quite leaky. I remember watching them against Glasgow, and they were as porous as it gets that night. I think it was October, November last year, when I think Jamie Doby, Tuapolo just ran through them for fun that night and racked up, what was it, 56, 60 points? I can't remember off the top of my head. So yeah, I think Cardiff pass. I think it's probably about where they may expect to be. Like, you could have crept in last game of the season, but yeah,
I don't think you could say they've underperformed.
No, they haven't. No.
Okay, right. So Ben, first of the Italian teams, Benetton.
Fail. Because of who they have in that side, whether it's Fekito, Brecht, Menangelo, Garbisi, I mean, there's a
Albanos.
lot of talent. Albanos. I mean, there's some talent there. Umaga, sorry. Right, who's that winger? Idogwu, I think, isn't it?
Ndogwu,
Yeah. I
Gaja.
mean, yeah. I don't understand what happened to Benetton this season, and I mean, I think what summed it up for them is just the two games against Zebre over Christmas, New Year, where I think Zebre probably came with that unlucky not to at least split those two games, if not take both games. And I just never saw Benetton really pull out a performance apart from the game against us, funnily enough, sort of like before we went on that little run before making the top eight. But they just seem to get to a point and then just go backwards. And whether it's the Six Nations again, I know we talked about this, that when the Six Nations comes around, because it's, Italia are so reliant on the vast majority of Benetton players. They've obviously got a few players in France, so it's Capozzo and the elder Garbisi. They just seem to fall apart. And yeah, there just seemed to be lack of cohesion on that back line. And with Breccia Menachel, you just expected better, and it just wasn't there.
Menachel was
for that reason,
quiet at club level this season. When you consider how good of a player he is, he's rumoured to be off. Obviously, Benetton put out a statement saying that he would be off. But I agree. I think that Benetton squad should be top six. Should be top six.
Yeah. How many players are they losing this season? Because I understand it's going to be a big shuffle.
Yeah, a lot
is their coach moving on as well?
Yeah, they've got rid of their coach. Brex has gone to Toulon. I think they're losing a few others. There's still murmurs that Manicello might go.
Is Fekito not at the end of his contract and leaving as well? I can't remember.
I haven't seen that he's leaving.
I think he's staying. I haven't seen anything that he's leaving yet.
So I know he went there for family reasons after leaving Munster, didn't he? Which is what, 2 seasons ago now? Is that right?
Yeah, about 2 seasons. Yeah,
maybe he's on a 3-year contract then. I don't know. Maybe I've read.
And look at their points difference, -85.
It's a lot, isn't it?
It's a lot. It's a lot. So so a first fail of the night is Benetton, and I completely agree. Mohammed, the Lions, 11th in the table.
Yeah, that's going to have to be a fail. Unfortunately, we set high standards here in South Africa, and even though we factor in the fact that the Lions, sort of the unfortunate position of really not being able to retain their players for a lot of different reasons. People don't really want to live in Johannesburg unless it's like a gated community, sort of a failed municipality there. And their players get picked off every year from not just within South Africa, but teams outside of South Africa. They're just not able to do what they did a decade ago when they built that Super Rugby team that actually made the final 3 years in a row, where they were actually able to retain good players. Because there are a lot of good players in South Africa, and the way forward for the Lions would obviously be, which is what they implement, is get the players who you can convince, like, hey, do you want to be third choice fly off at the Stormers? Do you want to be third choice fullback at the Sharks? Why not just actually play URC? Yeah, that type of thing. And unfortunately, it's just not working out for them long term. I hope that they do well. I hope that they're able to retain players, because I mean, some of their players from their heyday are still playing Test rugby right now and still playing relatively well, even though they're a bit on the older side. The ones that come to mind are Faf de Klerk and Mostert, which is still players. Mostert especially, who's doing well still in Japan. It's still players most teams, especially South African teams, would love to have, that type of thing. So, they started quite well. They started better than we did. I mean, we went on tour and got destroyed. But it was also an overlap. That's the thing with the Sharks. We have so many Springboks, but that means that the Rugby Championship overlaps so much with the start of the URC, including next season, that we then don't get those players at the start of the season. And on top of it, 1 week after the
but that doesn't affect the Lions because they haven't got any Springboks.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like the quality overall. They got caught out with the lack of quality.
Yes, yeah. So that's the kind of thing. That's the question about it being a fail, is that their quality isn't probably top 8. However, I do think they've been disappointing, and they've had disappointing performances. They've not looked good. I think they were better last season. They played some really nice rugby last season.
I mean, I didn't expect them to lose when the Welsh teams came over to South Africa in the last few games. They lost to Scarlets, correct? Would they lose to? So even though Scarlets are good, I thought the Lions would hold in. They got completely overrun by Benetton, if I remember correctly. So did they beat? They beat Connacht, I think. Yeah. They did beat Connacht.
The thing about their 8 wins as well is 4 of those were in the first 6 games. So they've had a
Yeah.
very
So
last
the wheels came
half
off a
of the
little bit.
season.
Yeah.
Not great, not great.
All these articles in Rugby 365, I need to speak to Jan de Koning about these articles saying that there's a lot of similar to what you said yesterday of Leicester, a lot of backroom misgivings going on there. So apparently the coach from time to time isn't that well liked. I literally don't know who the Lions coach is. I keep forgetting, but no one
Cash
refers
Van
to him by
Ruin.
his name. Who is it?
Cash Van Ruin, isn't it?
Yeah. People never refer to him by his name in South Africa. People always refer to him by his nickname.
Okay. Does anybody think that we're being harsh on the Lions with a fail?
Mm,
No, it's a fail.
no, yeah.
Okay. Ospreys. If I speak, I am in big trouble. It has to be a fail based on where they were last season. I
Come
do
backwards.
again a bit like Munster, they lost their coach. So if I mark down Munster for that, I have to mark down the Ospreys for that, even though that was semi-planned, semi-not. Really played hard to watch rugby at times. How many games did they win in the end?
7.
7.
Yeah.
Yeah, would they win 9 or 10 last year? The derbies they were very comfortably the best Welsh region last year. The Cardiff and Scarlets have gotten stronger. They've probably gotten a bit weaker. The fans are not happy at the moment with the signings situation. I think they've let this whole St Helens move be a real distraction for them in terms of keeping their eye on the prize in the meantime. And Mark Jones came in and lifted them, and they got a bit of a bounce there. And I was a huge fan of that. I thought he really got the boys playing. But then in the last 2 or 3 games, they just kind of reverted back to their start of season forms, which is disappointing. So I don't, and like you said, if they finished beneath a team like the Lions in the table, I think that you'd have to call that a fail, unfortunately. Does anybody think I'm being harsh?
No, fail.
No.
Okay. Adam, Connacht.
Well, I'm gonna give them a fail. I think cut to me next season when we see Stuart Lancaster taking charge because that's gonna be
Oh
so
yeah,
interesting.
we haven't spoken about that.
Yeah.
Sorry, let's briefly speak about that. I know there's been other news in the URC that we could have spoken about. I feel like the Stuart Lancaster to Connacht is the biggest news that's happened other than
That's
actual
one hell of a
relations.
coup. That's such a coup for them.
Massive.
He has not left. It's so funny, now that now that I'm able to see French rugby media, it's really opened my eyes to the spin that UK rugby media puts on stuff. And so I read in the Telegraph that Racing fans thought it was a terrible mistake to get rid of Stuart Lancaster. That is not what I read in French media. He was not liked in Racing. So, Adam, does that make you worried for Connacht getting him in?
No, not at all. I think because he knows the IRFU system. He worked at Leinster. He I almost would say that him being back into the provincial system is almost leading us to a point where is he going to be the successor to Andy Farrell because he's going to be coaching to the provinces. I think with Connacht with Pete Wilkins leaving in April, he sort of stepped down with immediate effect. I think that was sort of the right decision. I think he was sort of almost like a deer in headlights, and it was a bit overstepping the mark. Whereas
I
coaching
just
is
realized there's a stats tab on all these things. We could have been
there's
looking at it the whole
yeah.
time.
I was looking
Anyway.
at I was actually been looking at it to be fair before like seeing at Connacht, but I've noticed in Connacht's results as well over the season they've been scoring a lot of points. They've been scoring a ton of points. Like their attack has been really good. It's just the defense that really lets them down. The defense like really lets them down in that sense. But they've got a
The
couple of
URC
coaches.
website in the defense part doesn't list points conceded, which
No,
is
no.
the whole point of defense. Sorry, Adam.
It's all good, it's all good. But when I look at like Connacht's results, they've been like losing by like 2-3 points most of the time. It's all in like 2 or 3 points, 1 point, and then they just get thrashed one day. Like I would use like the example of like when Connacht beat the Scarlets at the very start of the season. They also beat Sharks. They nearly beat Munster as well. You know, if they were to go on as if they were to go on and excel from that, but there was no acceleration. It was sort of like a reverse almost of their fortunes. But yeah, I'd say it's a fail. Their attack coach is coming to us next season, which is very nice. Because it's Mark Sexton. So um the day that I saw Sexton signs for Ulster, it gave me a shiver. But but yeah, I think Connacht fans have a lot to be optimistic about next season, not so much this season. I think they'd have a pretty good crack at that Challenge Cup as well next season as well. So I think Lancaster is the right man for the job. He's the best out of the available bunch, I'd say.
What
Yeah,
Lancaster really needs to do is need to get the most out of the players, other than the really old. Well, Bandiaki is really old,
Yeah.
and Mac Hansen. Everybody else really needs to come to the party, because those two guys this season at least were not really that reliable, and when they did play, they didn't exactly set the world alight. So I
Yeah.
think it's a positive. I watched a lot of the videos. The facilities look pretty good. Yeah, I think for overall for Irish rugby, with Munster getting a new sort of exciting coach, Leinster being as strong as they are, Ulster having sort of basically the under 20s coaching staff now, and hopefully give them time to build a team there. And then Connor didn't look half bad when I watched them play live here at Cape Town Stadium. Yes, they beat us in the second round of the URC, because round one was suspended because we were supposed to play the Lions, but then we eventually played the Lions in the Currie Cup final. But in fairness, Adam, Connacht beat an exhausted second string Sharks team, because most of our really
Yeah.
good players were in playing a rugby championship. And then we just won the Currie Cup, got on a plane, flew to Galway, and then went like,
Yeah.
cold here, isn't it?
I think as well, like they signed Joshua Oni, and he was like he had this sort of like pedestal, and he didn't really perform. He
Yeah.
didn't really get suited to that Galway wind. Like we're so used to seeing like the likes of Jack Carty mastering the wind in Galway, but
Oh,
I think Josh
look at the
had
stats
another
there.
thing
The
coming to him.
least kickingest team in the whole of the URC.
Which is mad because Galway, like Connacht, they're in such like a catchment for like Gaelic footballers. When you think of like the players that went through Connacht's rugby system, Robbie Henshaw's the perfect example. Played Gaelic football. He can kick. He can launch a ball for miles. And then he started at Connacht, won the Pro 14. Was it Pro 14 or was it Pro 12? Pro
12.
12. Pro 12, and then he went on to Leinster. They've got a healthy catchment area in the west of Ireland. It's just that they struggle to keep the players that they have, because they will just naturally go on to Leinster or Munster or even Ulster in parts as well. But yeah, I'd say it's a pretty interesting one. I'm surprised they kept Josh in the squad next season. I think he signed a contract extension. But yeah, I'd say it's a pretty optimistic view for Connacht next season, but I'd say it's a fail for this season.
Yeah. And moving on to them, Adam, I'll be honest, I didn't realise that Ulster had finished bottom Irish province. I thought they'd finished
Yeah,
above Connacht. They've won more games than them,
yeah.
minus
Well,
92 points difference. I mean, have you
well,
say, pass or fail?
I'll fail. This is the worst season that I've seen Ulster play in my years watching them. I think it's really annoying as an Ulster fan. I grew up with players that were very like proud to wear the jersey. I didn't say I'm not like belittling any of the passion that was there this season, but I think with the squad we had in, not making playoffs is mental. Like we had our fair share of injuries during the season as well.
Yeah, you really did.
We really did, like especially in the props. I think losing Andy Warwick next season is really interesting. Unless he decides to retire, which he hasn't announced where he's going or if he's retiring or not. We're sort of having a changing of our guard ourselves. Alan O'Connor's off. He's going, but we're getting in Augustus and Angus Bell in as well. We've got a lot to be optimistic about, but I'd say when Mohammed, you mentioned us having the under 20s Ireland's coaching setup, that's very good. However, as an Ulster fan, I'm looking at who everyone else has. Connacht now having Stuart Lancaster, Munster having the coach coming in from the Chiefs, and Leinster with Jackie Sniber, and I'm like, why do we have a coach who I still have hope in him, but 10 years ago he was the kicking coach for Leinster. Whereas you look at the caliber of coaches coming in from all the other provinces, why have we not got the finger in the pie there? Like why can't we not have an outsider shot come in? Because we also had Bell leave midway through the season, our defensive coach, who I'm gonna say it again, it was a jobs for the boys moment. He was Ulster defensive coach 10 years ago, and his defensive system, yes, worked, got us to a Heineken Cup final, and then got so stale so quickly. Then he moved on to the Premiership, and then he came back. I think Ulster need a complete
Holy crap!
change.
I've just seen your scrum stats.
Yeah, well, we didn't. We had our props this year. It was bad. Like our loose heads, like we had a plethora of different AIL boys come through for us. And Angus Bell, hopefully our savior coming in December, November time will help that. Even though I don't think I think it's a scrumming that he needs to improve on, ironically enough. But we struggled. We struggled massively this season. And we've got some green shoots there. I'm not being totally pessimistic. We've got green shoots in Jack Murphy. Nice wee operator. He's only 20. He seems like he could be quite good, but losing John Cooney as well. And Nathan Doak's form this year, he sort of did a bunch of that instead of actually passing the ball. He was more interested in what the ref had to say than looking up and looking around. I think I sent a photo in this week. Like they also met Wayne Lineker, which just isn't good crack. Like I can't imagine for a morale's sake. That
I've
like
got a story to tell you after we finish recording.
Oh, grand. But like I saw that photo and I just went, it kind of like I don't know what it is about Ulster at the minute. It's just that we like the laughing and the joking that goes on after we lost the game against Ospreys. You still see players laughing and joking around. There's no sense of professionalism there. We need a big shake up. It's coming, I hope. But yeah, it's a fail for Ulster.
The counter argument to the coaching thing is that young coaches need to be given a chance someplace, sometime. But there does seem to be a thing of rugby of like just getting sort of a boost from like a high profile coach. I mean, Munster's getting the guy from New Zealand, and when you get a guy from New Zealand who also won things, and then that sort of galvanizes the team, or at least brings a degree of excitement and that type of thing. I mean, there's still a lot to talk about. If should the Sharks let Plumtree go and that type of thing. And I'd like to hear like, is Mike Checker, is he available?
That would be interesting. But as an Ulster fan, we've had our high profile coaches. We've had John O'Gibbs, and then he was like, listen, guys, I need to move back home. The weather and stuff, and then he moved to France. So I'm not sure if he got confused at the airport. We had a few coaches do that, but he's not very high up in my book. Let's just say.
Okay, all right. So that's Ulster fail. Ben, Zebras.
Yeah, it's got to be a pass because of who they beat. Munster at home, beat us away. Ran Benetton close in those two games. I think it's a pass. I think, and also having their long-term future, I think, is now sewn up. They are staying in Parma. The FIR have decided to continue with the team and its current guys. I think it's Fischetti off the front, the tight heads, loose head prop. I don't know, because obviously he's the kind of
might be. I think there's a few boys moving to Benetton as well.
Oh, no, that sucks.
So it's what they can do over the summer to retain and continue, because I don't think anyone saw that coming this season. They would have, but for bonus points, they would have finished higher up. But yeah, I think it's a definite pass. I think they could be pretty pleased with it.
They beat us in Belfast as well.
Yeah, they did.
That's they were brilliant. Like I think them being the pass here is perfect, because any other rugby fan would look at that, and if they're not involved with the URC or they don't really know about the URC, and they'd be like them giving a pass to a team that's second bottom.
They ran the Sharks close as well, didn't they?
Yeah,
they did. That was a great game.
Great. In the principle of rugby, it's often true, but not always true, that the forwards decide who wins and the backs decide by how much. But Zebre have really good backline movements and players, and their ball movement was great and hands and everything. So really refreshing to see, but somewhat sad to hear that the Benetton are poaching some of their players.
Yeah, I think it's always the case though. I think that's just the model. But it's difficult to justify when you read out the stats based on what we've been hammering other teams for their stats, and Zebra stats are worse, demonstrably. But I think you come from a team that won one game last season to win 5, could have
And
won
had
more.
won an
like you
away
said,
game
Ben.
in a few years, had they? I don't think.
Yeah,
2 years, 2.5
I think
years.
they had a real purple patch. I think just one of the feel good stories of the league this season. So I'm completely on board with Zebra Pass. Unfortunately, though, we have to finish with the Dragons, and it can only be a fail. I think the first Welsh team ever to finish bottom. They've been the bottom Welsh region for a long time now. There's discussion about whether they're the worst pro team in rugby. I don't think they are. I do think Newcastle Falcons are worse, but that's the kind of discussions that they're having, and the amount of surgery.
Did they play each other in the Challenge Cup this season?
Yeah, they did.
Newcastle
Dragons won.
Dragons won. Yeah,
Yeah, away.
Yeah.
Newcastle Falcons are awful, but so
Red Bull Falcons now.
Red Bull Falcons.
Yeah,
God,
Red
that's
Bull.
In the Prem, not the Gallagher.
Oh yeah,
Premiership
not the.
anymore.
Oh God.
Red Bull
Anyway.
gives you wings Falcons.
Yeah. So yeah, the Dragons bad. Basically, there's no many surprises here. Their worst season ever. One win, which is in round 1 against the
It's the
Ospreys.
isn't it? Yeah.
The just I've said this before. All the chat about players and talent and stuff in Wales, and the problem with the Dragons was the coaching. They sacked Di Flanagan and promoted Fila Tier. I think that was a mistake. And there are times you'd watch them on the pitch and you're like, these players are talented enough to be, not challenging for playoffs in the URC, but to be playing in the league, most of them. But they just don't look like they know what they're doing out there. And they make decisions and you go, was that the plan? Why did you do that? And it's just lack of organisation, finding a way to lose. There was a lot of games where they were in it up to the 60th minute and then just found a way to lose. Like again, a Judgment Day against the Scarlets, they were right in that game. Managed to find a way to concede 30 points and lose again. It's just, so hopefully the signings that they brought in pay dividends for them this time, and they can sort out their strength and conditioning departments, and Fiorentier gets the support he needs as a head coach, and they can turn it around. But you're daft to call it anything other than a fail for the Dragons. So there's our URC team by team review. I hope everybody enjoyed it. We have not only reached the end of that, but we've also reached the end of the program and the end of this season. Sad. So thank you to Ben, who's been here the whole time. The only one who has been in. Have you been on every episode, or have you missed a couple?
I missed 2 because I was on holiday.
How dare you?
Yeah, part-timer. So thank you to Ben, to Mohammed, and to Adam.
Thank you to you all as well.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
This is the first season of this podcast existing. It has massively exceeded mine and producer Lee's expectations when we set it up. It's been a great success, and there's exciting things coming for this podcast in the future. I shall say no more. But thank you from me. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rugby, and next time your team plays, I hope it wins. Cheers.
That was the United Rugby Rewind. Please rate, review and share us on socials if you can, and join us next week for more of the same. And until then, enjoy your rugby.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.